Okay, it's nearly 2 o'clock, and it's about time for class session. And I see I have some participants. Let me see what we've got here. See Houston, good to see you. Libby and Brandon, good. Glad to have you here. Now, I'm going to take some time today to talk about a couple of things, and then, of course, we'll be doing some grading. I have a resource that was shared with me that I think you'll maybe want to take a look at. This talks about why AI, artificial intelligence, is like the new electricity, and why a lot of people see it as this sort of utility that's going to really change how we do business. And it would be interesting for you to know that at the start of the 20th century or near the end of the 19th century, almost every town had its own electricity generated primarily through hydroelectric power, or bought from somebody who did. So, the electricity was simply just not get a given like it is today, and it was as exotic a technology as artificial intelligence is today. So it's a good article, one to take a look at, and has a lot of folks are. Andrew Nigg, I believe, is one of the people who speaks in here. Go back here for just a sec, and I just looked at it very briefly this morning, and this is from Horton School, Knowledge at Horton, excuse me, and talking about that. Andrew Nigg, he founded Coursera and talks about the AI Frontiers program, and the kinds of the different applications or uses of artificial intelligence. And they talk about Rosie, the robot, of course, is from the Jetsons fame. Well, anyway, a resource there for you to take a look at. And I wanted to also go ahead and talk a little bit about the assignments that you had today. One was an interactive session, and you could choose one from chapter 13, 14, or 15, and this one's due. It was due on the 6th, and I want to just talk about it very briefly. So I'll thumb through and folks had a choice of which one they wanted to do. Let me pop over to the table of contents for just a minute. The interactive session numbers the interactive session over on 13, you could choose from 13, 14, or 15. The one over on chapter 13 deals with mobile applications and the challenges that come along with that. The session for chapter 14, that one deals with New York City time, okay, and some of the issues that they had there with New York City and trying to get lights and different types of the street lights and stop signs, etc. Everything is synced up. And then in chapter 15, which is the last chapter of the book, by the way, the interactive session, there, you have two of them, one on e-commerce Russian style and the other in South Korea and its restricted internet. So you had some choices, and I'll be interested to see what people chose to take a look at. So that's one piece of it. The other was, again, giving everybody some options in terms of hands-on projects. I'll scroll down here, okay, and there are those there on pages 457 to 458. You can upload one of those, and I'll take a look at them for just a minute. They really deal with those hands-on projects at the bottom of page 457 over through 458. One is U.S. Pharma, the other is Canadian Tire. You could choose from one of those, or if you wanted to, you could look at the expert system, that case, and then finally the product evaluation selection, the web browser shopping software. So some interesting choices there for people in terms of their responses, and of course then an exam over Chapter 11. I want to just kind of keep us going here in terms of the schedule, because we're coming down to that piece of the part of the course where you'll be doing some independent work. And next week you've got interactive sessions 8, hands-on project 11, and you have exams over chapter 11, 12, and 13. Okay, and then you come to week 14, which is you come to week 13, my apologies. And that's Thanksgiving week, okay? And so, and Wednesday the 22nd is the Thanksgiving holiday. And on Monday the 20th, I give everybody flex time to begin to work on their finals and the final exam projects. Then they're on week 14, okay? The same story. And then, of course, week 15, which is the semester's gone fast, which will bring us to the last week of class, okay? And to have you work on finals. I want to take a little bit of time to talk about that, and so, you know, these last weeks, 15, 14, and week 13. Those are flex time kinds of weeks, and if I'm on here, what I'll do is what I do with other courses. When we come to this point in the semester, I will be online in the class, like a virtual help session. People have questions and anything like that, but there won't be a lecture or any of that type of activity. This is so you can get your work done. Now, I want to show you just for a moment the final exam schedule, and I've got that over there so there are no questions. And our class meets from 2 to 3:15, okay, on Mondays and Wednesdays. There is no such slot per se, and so what we have to do is look at the one that's the nearest. And so BISS 3503, this course, Management Information Systems, our final exam will be from 3:15 to 5:15 on Tuesday, the 12th of December. Okay, so that's what's going on there. Now, I want to come down here and talk about what we've got going on. Okay, now this is part of that final exam. All right, this is due. Okay, this is due at the start of the final exam period. As you know, I will often give everybody a final exam that has a project component and then just simply straight quizzes. Can you work ahead? Yes, you certainly may, and I would encourage you strongly to do so. Okay, and so you have that work you can do there. As a note here, it's due at the start of the final exam period. This is pretty straightforward. I don't think there's a big issue, and I want you to address the issue of infotainment packages. You say, now, okay, what's the point with this? Well, as we've talked about Monday, okay, we're using MIS not only as a means to do enterprise computing, okay, but we're also using MIS to provide what I call enterprise experience on the part of our end users or customers. MIS really ought to do one of two things, or both, really one of three things: enhance internal operations, okay, or two, it should increase customer intimacy, okay, or three, do both. And so these infotainment packages that come, especially with higher end vehicles, are designed exactly to do that. And while the public kind of, I think most people who buy one of those vehicles, or any of these vehicles that have all the, even a low end vehicle has has an incredible number of embedded sensors and chips that are used that monitor systems. And then you take the high end, and the ones that are most visible are infotainment and driver assist. Okay, and driver assist things like, you know, a little icon, a sensor actually on the end of a mirror that goes hot if your vehicle, on the driver's side, if another vehicle it comes too close. Some vehicles have a sensor that will activate some kind of a beep, or will maybe give your tush a little push if it's like you're not steering. My car, if I'm driving at I think 38 miles an hour or above, and I take my hands off the steering wheel, okay, it will go straight for a short amount of time, and then that steering wheel starts jumping, kind of starts vibrating, and I get a vibration through the seat, and then a little ping and visual warning. And what they're really saying is, this is in case you wake up or something like that. So we're seeing MIS evolve from just something we use, you know, internally, to an external kind of tool that provides a seamless or a more comprehensive or a better experience for the end user. And so that's one of the reasons I included this, so you'll take a look. Now, also, at the start of the final exam period, and we'll come down here, I want you to create a self-developed quiz from the hyper-socialization text, okay? It's one of the texts in the book. And as I've said it many, many times, social media are a solution in search of a problem for most companies. Most companies have social media. They're not quite sure how to use them. They're not quite sure what to do with them. And I think probably one of the most interesting has been, as I've stated this before, has been to watch as the president has used a social media platform that was really took off with teenagers and young people your age, Twitter, okay? And now today, I think they've announced that finally that Twitter's going to go from 140 to 280 characters. And if I'm not mistaken, I saw something in the news where the president's son got a little bit torqued because they're going to go to 280 characters. I mean, who cares? But the President of the United States tweets, and he gets people's attention. So again, it's one of those interesting things, and I hope you'll take a look at it, because I do believe social media platforms they can bring some great value to a company, and we're just now starting to talk about how we do that. But you know, in my mind, where it fits is with this issue of customer intimacy, customer relationship management. I'm not sure in terms of in terms of operational excellence what all you could do with it, although I'm sure there are going to be some companies out there who are pioneering that. So I wanted to have you do that. Now that's due, okay, at the start of the exam period, okay, 3/15 on the 12th of December, right? And then you have two quizzes, one over chapter 14, one over chapter 15. This is an hour time limit for chapter 14. As you notice, it's due at the end of the final exam period. And then you see, of course, a quiz or an exam on chapter 15, same story. So I'm giving you plenty of time, okay, plenty of time to work ahead, okay? And I'm going to be interested, especially to see how you evaluate the luxury vehicle infotainment, how you handle that assignment. And so I'm expecting to see some pretty good results in terms of that. And I think this will be interesting as well to see the kinds of questions that you put together. So that, you know, we're kind of coming to that inflection point in the course in which you know, we'll be kind of hitting that highlight. And if I did not mention, I mentioned it earlier to the management science class. Okay, today obviously is the 8th. On the 15th, I get to play medical transportation provider again, and so I'll pre-record something for everybody. It will be just kind of a you know, maybe 20 or minutes, 30 minutes at the very most. Nothing really surprising in terms of what's well, there probably some guest lectures, that type of thing as well, that will make some sense. And I'll have that pre-recorded for you on the 15th, so it'll be there for you to take a look at. And I'll probably get it done Friday, maybe this weekend. Okay, but this is just one of those things, and I'm thankful that I've got this technology that I can use to record a lecture, so you don't have to miss a class. I don't have to miss a class. It's there, and you can see it when it's convenient for you. And if I've got to do something, I can do so. And I just have to. I've got to. When you get to be at my point in life, or maybe you have that situation now. There's going to be times when people depend upon you, and you just have to do it. And I'm just thankful, you know, I'm able to use the technology to do that a little bit. And you all are probably thankful you don't have to endure me. So yeah, you know, it's a win-win-win for everybody. Okay. Now I also wanted to mention to you that I have some guest lectures for you, and I do this not just to fill up time, but to give you an opportunity to again hear some very forward-thinking people in terms of information technology, MIS, etc. And I'm going to download this real quick, and I want to take a minute to talk about it. Maybe it'll render up faster. This LMS is so spotty in terms of how fast it renders things. Now, here I have one on augmented reality maps. Something that's quite dear to my heart. There is an application out there called Google Goggles. Okay, I have it on my phone, and what it literally will do is it will act like a pair of virtual reality goggles. Okay, pardon me, augmented reality goggles that will identify restaurants or, you know, things that you would. They'll take your location, and they'll give you a whole series of different views on the phone. Now, I don't think Google Goggles got very far. I understand what they were trying to do. On my phone, I also have a virtual reality app from the New York Times, and I can beam into the New York Times, and then I've got it right here in the office. I have a VR view, and it's a virtual reality view, and basically what I do it's an you may have one of these, but basically what I do is I take my phone, okay, I put it inside, and then this viewer gives me a virtual reality experience, and I can look at it's VR View 2, and it's a virtual reality viewer, and it's kind of fun. I use it, and then the one I have that came from the New York Times is basically cardboard, and it's like a cardboard box, and I just take my phone, okay, and I slip it inside, and the two viewers, the two glass viewers, give me a virtual reality tour. And the Times publishes those kinds of things. So we're going to see more and more. Of course, you know, Oculus is the most expensive, and that goes beyond just something that's augmented reality. But augmented reality maps, that he talks about this, and some of these, note that some of these TED Talks I'm going to encourage you to go see are 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. And so a lot of what those folks are talking about is coming to fruition. Some of it is still out there. Here is, I think, a fascinating, very, very fascinating talk. In fact, I looked at it this morning while I was having breakfast. It's really fascinating. This is, of course, based upon the idea of ubiquitous computing, and that is devices that are computers. So you come in, you have a desk, and you touch a designated part of the desk, and there's your laptop, or there's your tablet, and we're just going to see more and more of this type of thing. And he's talking about internet without screens. In other words, computing, ubiquitous computing, using all types of devices. I know some of this sounds really strange, okay? But if I was teaching business 35 years ago, or even 25 years ago, a lot of the things that we talk about today, people would have said there's no way it'll ever happen. It just won't. I'll never forget, the first book I ever wrote, I talked about a network of networks. My co-author and I, he's down at Florida State, we talked about a network of networks and the commercialization of what was then known as DARPANET, and how that commercialization was going to spread, that someone was going to create a way to create boards, pages, or something where we collect. Well, you know, that I remember the publishers were really uncomfortable with what we were saying, because they're saying, you know, you're really talking about stuff far ahead, and our response is, you have no idea what's ahead of us. I remember going to a seminar. I was in a summer seminar program back in the early 80s, and one of the speakers talked about ubiquitous computing, and everybody said, what? And many of the things have come to fruition. People are developing those products. So I think when we talk about the notion of like artificial intelligence, that article I mentioned earlier, as electricity, the computers, the same story, and the development of high-speed computing, the development of chips, the cloud, etc. We just don't know where all these things are going to do. Now, I'm on the editorial board of a book that looks at technology and society, and I think the thing is a compendium of articles and stuff. They collect, the chief editor collects a bunch of stuff, and we all look and say, yeah, this looks good. But it's really striking to me that the things, the ways that people see technology, that it's just digital technology, the notion of being online, offline has pretty much disappeared. And a lot of the kinds of things like tracking, the ability to track consumers, all of those, a lot of the ethical issues, okay, that arise are a real challenge for us, and it's going to become a real challenge for you as business people as you go forward in your career, okay? And when will we stop collecting information about everybody, or when will you be able to sell your information for particular value, okay? And I would foresee someone somewhere is going to start a movement where consumers are selling their data, not just right now. You and I, when we sign up for a phone or we get an internet subscriber thing, we pay for the privilege of giving away our data. That's how ridiculous this thing is. And if that will change, or have to change in one way or the other. Well, I think the other thing that you know, just while I'm off on it, I'll talk about it, is I think one of the other great challenges we have is that we have so many people who are being left behind so quickly. You know, when people talk about the loss of manufacturing jobs, okay, what they really usually mean is a person who stood in an assembly line 8 hours a day, worked for was a union member, did a repetitive task over and over and over, and was really just, you know, they might put on a bumper, they might they might install a radio. I mean, if you go back and you can find them on YouTube or in old textbooks to see how people made things versus how we make, how you go to a modern automotive plant and there are more robots than people, okay? And those kinds of things are just beyond the pale of a lot of people, and they don't understand that. And for you, the great challenge is going to be keeping yourself trained and up to date, and keeping yourself in a position to move forward with your career, or if you have to change industries or whatever, simply because of the brain power you possess. And you're going to be paid for what you know, and how, and also how well you can adapt and learn. This is a fascinating, I watched this 2 or 3 times, and I think this one is just absolutely fantastic. Reach into the computer and grab a pixel. Now, if you want to see, and this is going to sound stupid, but it's true, if you really want to see some excellent use of management information systems, okay, watch the weather around Oklahoma City, the Weather Channel or the television stations here, and you're going to see some of the most advanced technology that's out there. I think believe it's channel 5, okay? One of the storm chasers, Mike Smith, lives down the street from me. So, you know, after a bad day of a storm, not a storm, so he might come dragging through. I'll occasionally see him, and he goes out and he chases storms. He's a spotter. But to make a long story short, they're developing these computer graphics now that will not only give us a flat screen view of a storm, but will literally let us get they'll create a holograph or a semi-holograph that lets us look at the inside of the storm. So, you know, Damian Lane can come on and say, well, now at this level, the rotation is at this speed, and at the next level, it's at this speed. Right now, when during tornado system, and you hear them talk about the wind, okay, the rotation, what they have now are just these pixels that go to green to red, and then when you see them kind of like oppositional, red on one side, green on the other, that tells you guys there's trouble brewing. But this is just a fantastic thing when it talks about creating a virtual machine and reaching inside of it, or a virtual data set and reaching inside of it. And again, how these things will all play out in terms of commercial applications, I don't know. Nobody really knows for sure. But I can tell you this: they're going to pop up and be so unexpected that they will disrupt entire industries. And if you don't believe me, consider this. At one point, okay, there were, I think, well over, I don't know how many tens of thousands of newspapers there were in the United States, and they're mostly gone, okay. And the question is, you know, which would I rather do? Have a kid come by and throw my paper in the mud, or just get on the computer and go look at the New York Times or the LA Times, or go look at the Economist, or go over and look at the newspapers over in Europe. Which would I rather do? Okay, and so those folks are out of business. I do see, and my wife is an avid magazine taker. And I watch how she consumes those products, and they have a curious way of tying online with the magazine that comes to the doorstep that she gets. So it's some interesting stuff. Here's another one on the use of holograms, okay, and a vision of how they can be used and applied. Now, each of these are, I think, 10 to 12, maybe 15, 20 minutes. And so I'm really encouraging you, if you would, go over and take a look at them and see them. You can read the transcripts, okay? And those transcripts, so if there's a speaker for whom English is maybe their second or third language, the transcripts will do you well. But I encourage you to do that for a very simple reason. And this is just a personal opinion. I think that, you know, you're living through a time when the idea of the modern nation state, or the idea of a municipality, has become very, very fluid. Okay, and that's because in many respects, those institutions just simply have not adapted to the world in which they live. And that is a world that's a very borderless world, a world without a lot of borders. Now, on the opposite side of that, we have someone who talks about building a wall, okay? And that is a response to a borderless world, a world in which people are, you know, the border between the Mediterranean Sea is between a place people are trying to get out of and a place to get to, and they just get in boats and go. Or coming across the border in our own country. And so these are some challenges, and for many of those, for governmental institutions, technology is going to be a massive, massive, massive challenge. And we see how the use of these technologies, government MIS, for example, is really pretty bad. Okay, and you know there are some so you as business people can be folks who can also be great citizens by showing people the way to use these technologies. Business can do a lot of modeling of things that you just can't get done in government until government kind of catches up. Now, it's interesting because at one point it was just the opposite. It was government that drug industry and the rest of us into the future. A case in point would be the use of computers. Computers were originally used for the census. That's why and Mr. Watson, the founder, the old man, the founder of IBM, they had numerical computation machines, but then they developed the computer, okay, and he believed that you know, of course, the famous quote, he thought he might sell 3 of them a year. And so computers were used to drag us into the future. And the computing systems, the very crude ones that were used in the space program, for example, to help people to assist with the space program, especially with the moon. And of course, as they were making that descent into the moon, they had to leave that and go to manual. So thank God they had good pilots. And that's all changed now, okay? And it's really Silicon Valley and places like, and then companies that are pioneering these kinds of things, okay? And so I would encourage you to go out and take a look at these TED Talks. Make it a regular, make it a habit, because you're going to see things a lot of times that are going to come to fruition pretty quickly. A lot of people who are venture capitalists watch TED all of the time, looking for ideas, looking for what people call the unicorn. Okay, and you'll hear that talked about. So that would be pretty much it. And I wanted to encourage you in that way to take a look at these. And these are some guest lectures for the 8th. There's about about 20, I think 25 or 30 minutes there. Here, of course, is another resource for you to take a look at. And again, and I think this is Knowledge at Horton always has some interesting, very thought-provoking kinds of articles. And all I can say is that the stakes in the game have changed. You say, well, what do you mean? Okay, let me give you a very simple example. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, even 20 or 25 years ago, if you owned, let's say you owned you were the local plumber, you had a plumbing business, okay? You were in the phone book, people called, you went out, you did your work, and you could make a pretty good living, okay? And you still can if you are out there on the internet, if you know how to use media to get positive comments, if you know how to use the media, if you know how to use computer technology to assist you in big jobs or big problems that you might have. And if you're not able to do that, you won't be in business very long, because someone else will be there and they will take over. And the first time I understood this, and I'm not going to name the lawn service, okay, but it's a name you would recognize. And my wife and I, we had just moved here from Arizona. In Arizona, you don't have yards. You have rocks. You have some vegetation out front, but everything else is rocks. It's not the land of grass. It's a desert. And so we came back here, and we knew we'd need a lawn service. And so we called, and I said, okay, when will the guy be out to look everything over? He said, oh, we don't do that. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we've got, we have Google Earth, and we'll just check to see what, the size of your lot and what the terrain looks like and all that, and we'll get back and give you a quote. And I'm standing there with my mouth open going, I teach this stuff, and what? Okay. And there we go. So that's when things really hit me. And then, of course, as I interact with people, repair people, especially repair people, contractors, folks of that ilk, okay, I watch as they adopt these new technologies, and it's absolutely mind-boggling. It's just mind-boggling. And I'll tell you, there's some great opportunities for people out there who maybe, might have thought, college is the only place really to. Trust me, the guy who comes and, I've said this before, the guy who comes and fixes my dryer, he leaves a couple $100 in his pocket almost every time. Okay, or my washer, and he's, when the last time he was here, and I said, hey, you mind if I just watch you do this? He said, okay, yeah. And so he takes apart my washer, okay? Now, my washer has a plastic drum with a device that turns, to churn the water. But everything else, the back of it is a giant motherboard. I said, this looks like a motherboard for a computer. And then with all the, with all the connections out to the various parts, and he's disconnecting, one line from the machine that's under there. And he said, yeah, I got to look at the sensors. And so he's looking at the sensors, and I'm going, what? And so all I can say is, it was a lesson for me. And I said, how much? I'm just curious. How much training do you do each year? He said, oh, he said, I go to courses about 2 or 3 times a year, just to stay up on the product. And it floored me. So these TED Talks and as we're moving into some of these later chapters, take this to heart, okay? Because these are where we're going to find some opportunities, or we're going to find disruptors in our industries, okay? And I think it will be an interesting thing. Now, I think your textbook had mentioned learning management systems. They talked about the knowledge management, and you've been experiencing a learning management system, and that is you've been working using Canvas. And I've taught online for 25 years. I was one of the very first people that did it, and I could tell you that the learning management platform today versus what was there, it's light years different, and each of them are designed with a different feeling or different look, or what we call a different cognitive map. And what we're going to see are more and more of these systems. It's unfortunately it's not you or me, but your kids for sure. When they go off to college, and you're gonna, trust me, it's coming. It'll happen to you. You'll wake up one day and your mom and dad sitting Ken out the door, and they're going off to college, and you're paying for it, hopefully, or a grandkid. That they'll come in, and the learning management system will be one that really does a lot of diagnostics work and presents the material to your granddaughter or grandson or daughter or son in a mode of learning that works best for them. Okay, and that's on the way. It's slowly being developed, where the first couple of weeks are nothing but diagnostics. Okay. And that's going to really change things a whole lot. Well, again, I thank you so much for being here, and you've got some material that you can look at. I certainly would like you to take a look at this article over at Knowledge at Horton, and these guest lectures as well. And you'll have those. And then again on the 15th, don't forget, on the 15th, I'll have a pre-recorded session for you. Okay, and then we'll move into the Thanksgiving holiday week, and that week you'll be on really much working independently. The same thing on week 14, the same thing on week 15, and then of course comes finals week. So the semester is going pretty fast and furious. It looks like I've had some more people join us. Let me pop up here for a second. If I can get it to pop up. There it is. Houston, Libby, okay. Martin, Robert, Samuel, Shane, Yamil, glad to see you there, and Brandon. So anybody have a question? I'm going to unmute everybody. So if you're listening to music or the dogs barking, I'm going to mute you here for a second. Anybody have a question?
That's crazy.
Why don't they do their own on here?
I don't think so.
Okay, nobody has a question.
No, sir.
Okay, all right, folks.
Other sports, actually, no.
Anyways,
Never mind.
You know who does the laundry for baseball?
yeah,
Austin Cooper.
get ready for
Really?
Okay. All right, well, thank you so much, everybody, and I will see you later. And I'm going to stop the share and then stop the recording, and you've got some other things you can take a look at there.